The story begins under a starry night sky, where someone is contemplating the life of an assassin. A man named Raon receives praise from another man called Sir Derek. Raon looks up and thanks him, then shares a strange feeling he has. He believes that Derek is planning to kill him that very night. Derek compliments Raon on his work, crediting him for the rapid growth of their family's power. Raon humbly says he's just doing his duty. Derek then asks Raon if he ever thinks about wanting freedom. Raon replies that as a shadow, an elite assassin, he's programmed to follow orders without question. He doesn't have his own desires or feelings. Derek, intrigued, asks why Raon has been acting independently and wonders how he managed to break free from the mental control known as brainwashing. This method is how the Robert family controls their shadows, kidnapping children and conditioning them into loyal, obedient assassins. Sweating nervously, Raon wonders how Derek found out about his newfound freedom. Derek reveals that all shadows wear two types of collars. One for brainwashing and another as a last resort. With a snap of his fingers, Raon starts coughing up blood and falls to the ground, clutching his chest in agony. Derek explains that Raon is experiencing the effects of a parasitic insect called rageworm, which is currently consuming his heart. Raon questions why they needed another control method when they already had brainwashing, accusing Derek of hypocrisy. Derek simply says he believes in thoroughness and that everyone wears masks. His just happens to be thicker. Raon grimly recalls his life as the leader of the shadows. He didn't remember his past or have his own thoughts or feelings. However, he had discovered an ancient sword technique known as the Ring of Fire, or ROF, which allowed him to break free from his mental shackles. Raon thought he was finally on the path to freedom, filling his heart with hope. So why, he wonders, is he facing death instead of the freedom he so deeply desired? Raon contemplates the life he's led, wondering what wrongs he'd committed to deserve such a meaningless end. It can't end this way, he shouts, pulling himself up. Determined, he vows to at least injure Derek before dying. With a battle cry, he lunges at Derek, but in a blink, his head is severed from his body and lands on the floor. Derek gazes at Raon's lifeless form and muses that it's been a long time since anyone even scratched him. He orders his men to dispose of the body and walks away. Raon thinks to himself that Derek is the continent's most formidable martial artist and defeating him was always a long shot. Yet, Raon is filled with regret and anger for the life he's been forced to live. He had yearned for revenge, no matter what the cost. Just then, his necklace begins to glow blue. A message appears, saying he's been chosen by rage, but then errors out as his eyes close. When he opens them again, he's in a field, staring at a butterfly. A woman calls out, "Sonny, look here," and holds up a toy. He mutters, "Mama," and she smiles. She is Sylvia, and against all odds, Raon has been reincarnated as her child, complete with memories of his past life. At first, he thinks he's dreaming. Sylvia, cradling him in her arms, comments on the beautiful weather and hopes that the family patriarch will return soon to give him a proper name. Raon, now called Sonny, notes that being born into a prestigious family has its advantages. But the thirst for revenge still lingers within him. He resolves to be patient. He doesn't yet know his family's standing or the dynamics of this new world. Moreover, he hasn't mastered the Ring of Fire technique that could give him the power he seeks. Patience, he tells himself, is what he needs for now. Raon realizes that the grandeur of the family mansion suggests they are more than just a well-known family. Just then, the door bursts open and a servant announces that the patriarch of the family is arriving. Sylvia, startled, wants to prepare, but the servant tells her there's no time. A palpable sense of tension fills the room as the door opens. Raon senses this tension and turns to see a man with blonde hair and a red cape walk in. He recognizes the man instantly. Sylvia greets him warmly, and the man surveys the room. Raon knows he's in the presence of the King of Annihilation, Glenn Zieghart, who's considered the pinnacle of power on the continent. Realizing this, Raon thinks that he has been reborn into the most powerful family in the land. Sylvia asks her father if they should stop him from doing something. Ironically, Glenn decides to name him Raon, which means shadow, the same name he had in his previous life. As night falls, Raon wonders if the household is asleep. He reflects on how he's finally got a moment to himself, as he was always with Sylvia when he woke up, leaving him unable to use his magical abilities, known as mana. Alone at last, he sits up and begins practicing his Ring of Fire, ROF technique. He explains that unlike conventional training methods, which focus on breathing to gather natural mana, ROF creates a mana circle around the heart. This boosts all of his abilities and even has hidden advantages that not even Derek knows about. Raon thinks that mastering this technique could make his revenge on Derek more than just a dream. Raon senses that his body is filled with a chilling energy and identifies 9 blockages within himself that could be fatal if not dealt with. He considers that rather than just expelling this cold energy, integrating it into his ROF training could bring about something extraordinary. However, while deep in his cultivation practice, Raon nods off. He struggles to stay awake but eventually falls back to sleep. In the quiet of the night, an elderly figure, presumably his grandfather, sneaks into his room and places a hand over him. The next day, Raon is making his way down the hall when his mother calls out to him, cheering him on and encouraging him to keep going. Raon starts to grumble about having to act like an infant, claiming it's so unbearable he'd rather die. Just then, a woman hears a voice calling out to her and brightens up. She initially addresses the man as Sir, but then corrects herself, calling him Saint. He tells her to stick with Sir. Raon recognizes the man as the Saint of Rags, a legendary figure known for his unparalleled skills and incredible power. Although he's a renowned healer, he's rarely in one place due to his love for adventure. Saint of Rags mentions that he heard she had a baby and asks if Raon is her child. He dismisses the term sage as too grand for him. Lifting Raon into his arms, he notes how different the child is from Glenn, and asks for his name. Upon learning it's Raon, short for Shadow, he questions Glenn's choice in names. Raon observes their easy rapport and concludes that the rumors of Saint of Rags and Glenn being close friends must be true. Now called Rags, the Saint puts his hand on Raon to assess his condition. He tells Sylvia, Raon's mother, that her son is under the influence of a dangerous curse that blocks his magical energy. Urgent treatment is needed to prevent life-threatening complications. Sylvia refuses to believe him, but Rags assures her he will write a prescription for the condition. Just then, a maid interrupts, stating that the patriarch is looking for Rags. Annoyed at the timing, Rags leaves, promising to return after his conversation. Raon thinks to himself that while he now understands the nature of his condition, it doesn't change the fact that he needs to cultivate his Ring of Fire technique. His thoughts are interrupted when he notices his mother crying. Sobbing, Sylvia insists that it can't end like this, vowing to do whatever it takes to heal him. Raon feels an unfamiliar ache in his heart and reassures his mother, touching her cheek gently and telling her not to cry. She falls silent, stunned by his articulate words. Raon calls her Mammy, just as the scene switches to Rags in conversation with the patriarch. Suddenly, Sylvia bursts into the room, much to the maid's chagrin. Out of breath and desperate, she falls to her knees before Glenn, pleading for him to save their son, Raon. Glenn's daughter pleads with him to save Raon, stating that Raon means the world to her. Glenn coldly questions why he should help someone who doesn't contribute to the family's well-being. His daughter reminds him that Raon is his grandson. Glenn retorts that Raon is a grandson she brought into the family after abandoning her own. He grants Raon the name Zieghart, and says she should be grateful for even that. Despite her tearful pleas, she's escorted out of the room. Rags, watching the scene, sighs and calls Glenn stubborn. "Why act this way when you asked me here to examine your grandson?" Rags inquires. Glenn tells him to get to the point. After a brief summary, Rags notes that Raon might be okay for now, but his chances of becoming a martial artist are slim. Glenn replies that he doesn't care, as long as Raon lives. When Rags asks why Glenn named the boy Raon, Glenn pauses and says the name means more than just shadow. He elaborates that 1,000 years ago, the name had a different significance. Time skips forward. Sylvia feeds Raon a foul-smelling medicine from Mr. Rags. Despite its taste, Raon is grateful. It's the fire medicine he needs. The warmth from the medicine begins to balance out the cold within him. 2 years later, we see that Raon has made progress in his training and has achieved 1 ring in the Ring of Fire technique. Another 2 years pass. Raon, now 5 years old, describes his days playing with Sylvia and Helen in the mornings and training during the night. We see that his status window has returned, now showing that he's achieved the 2nd level of the Ring of Fire. Raon is thrilled. His senses are sharper now, and he wonders if it's connected to the status window. At that moment, Helen walks in asking about laundry, and Raon realizes she can't see the status window. He thinks back to how the window appeared when he achieved the 1st level in the Ring of Fire. At first, he was puzzled by it, but now he finds it helpful for gauging his abilities. And apparently, it's a tool only he can see. Raon reflects on his current challenges. Despite being a 2-star assassin, his stamina is low due to a condition known as the bitter cold curse. He's grateful for the medicinal treatments that have helped him progress. Over the past 5 years, everyone in his annex has taken excellent care of him, treating him like royalty whenever he's in pain. Since he's only 5 years old, he feels there's plenty of time to overcome his obstacles. Both the bitter cold curse and low stamina limit his physical capabilities, but Raon holds on to hope. In his past life, he was a formidable assassin and now possesses the Ring of Fire technique. He plans to augment this with the Zieghart swordsmanship, aiming to eventually defeat Derek. He knows he must proceed cautiously and seize the right opportunity when it presents itself. Sylvia, Raon's mother, interrupts his thoughts, informing him that they have a significant event to attend at the main building. At this point, the story provides some world-building details. The continent is governed by 6 emperors and 5 demons. The Zieghart family, to which Raon belongs, is part of the 6 emperors, who are forces for good. Every so often, a Judgment Day ceremony is held to evaluate the alignment of various powers. Today is the Zieghart family's Judgment Day. As Raon and Sylvia enter the crowded room, whispers circulate. Sylvia is regarded as an outcast, and by extension, expectations for Raon are low. He feels frustrated by the contemptuous way they treat his mother, especially when someone calls her shameless. Sylvia reassures him with a comforting look. Just then, the family patriarch, Glenn, enters the room. Raon notes it's been a long time since they've met. Glenn takes his seat and observes that everyone is present. With a wave of his hand, a massive sword descends from the sky. The Sword of Judgment. Glenn announces that it's time for the ceremony to begin. Raon describes how a special stone sword can measure a person's magical ability, or mana. The ceremony to test this starts with a boy named Byrne drawing a Z card. As he touches the stone sword, Raon explains that children's mana abilities generally stabilize by age 4. This judgment ceremony is designed to assess that ability. The room erupts in excitement when Byrne reveals his wind attribute, a favorable trait for a swordsman. Next up is a girl named Leon. Raon observes that the purer the mana, the further it travels up the sword, revealing the individual's specific mana attribute. In this society, talent is highly prized, almost as much as life itself. Raon doubts he'll score well because even with his 2-star Ring of Fire, he senses some cold energy in his circuits. But to him, the outcome isn't important. Finally, it's Raon's turn and the room's atmosphere shifts to disdain. Sylvia, presumably someone close to him, encourages him to go ahead. He steps up, thinking that he doesn't have high expectations. He just wants to know which mana attribute suits him. When he touches the sword, it glows orange, and his vision shifts. He sees a child's drawing of a mythical landscape filled with creatures called Pokemon and a mysterious man. Raon finds himself standing behind this man, who raises his sword, enveloped in the same orange light. With a single swing, the man annihilates the monsters, causing a massive explosion. When Raon opens his eyes, the room erupts in laughter. No one else saw the vision, and they mock his apparent lack of talent. Glenn, who seems to be an authority figure, looks disappointed but silences the crowd. His mother reassures him, praising his courage, if not his ability. Glenn calls an end to the ceremony, asking everyone to leave. As the room empties, only Glenn and another person named Alfred remain, pondering whether Raon's unremarkable performance is really all there is to him. As Raon observes his sword, it suddenly bursts into a vivid, golden aura. Glenn, witnessing this, is astonished and recalls an ancient text. The text described the first patriarch of the Zieghart's family, who once wielded golden flames capable of melting even demonic fires, a feat not repeated in the family history since. This unique energy, Glenn realizes, is the same radiant golden flame. Back in Raon's perspective, we see he's not yet reached his full potential, but he's determined to level up his Ring of Fire, Aura technique. 7 years have passed since his first judgment ceremony, making him now 12 years old. A side note suggests that the group scanning the story is not great at math. Raon has managed to approach the third stage of his rough, slowed only by an undefined, cold element. His resistance to cold has reached a 2-star level, and he decides it's time to start physical training. Just then, his mother calls out to him, reminding him to prepare for the second judgment ceremony, a gathering he's not looking forward to. When it finally ends, Raon is surprised at how quickly it's over. Glenn confronts Raon, questioning why he hasn't responded to orders for basic training for a whole month. Confused, Raon hears Sylvia interject that he's unique. He contains too much cold energy to endure regular training. Glenn dismisses her, saying that exceptions can't be made for someone with the Zieghart's name. Sylvia pleads for more time, and Glenn threatens her with expulsion from the family, eliciting laughter from the crowd. They mock Sylvia, calling her pathetic. Raon reflects on why his mother is treated this way. Sylvia had once left the family, breaking her energy core and disrupting her inner circuits. She returned only because she was left with no choice after his father died during her pregnancy. Raon faces a complicated family dynamic. Others might think poorly of someone who leaves and then returns to the family, but he's not about to let his mother, Sylvia, be mistreated. As he approaches a sword, Sylvia questions his actions. Raon assures her he'll be fine and announces that he'll start training next month, as ordered by Glenn, another powerful family member. The current martial hallmaster warns Raon that the training is brutal and he should reconsider. Unfazed, Raon insists he must honor his family's name and go through with it. Glenn releases a powerful aura, asking Raon if he understands the gravity of his commitment. The aura strikes Raon, making him bleed and feel crushed. In that moment, Raon realizes Glenn is far stronger than Sir Derek, truly living up to his title as the King of Annihilation. Sylvia and the martial hallmaster both suggest that Raon, being young, doesn't know what he's getting himself into. Glenn silences them, making it clear that he's the one speaking now. Sylvia grabs Raon, pleading to cancel the training as he's not ready for it. Grimacing, Raon recounts how his past as an assassin had always brought him close to death. But those days are behind him. He vows to step out of the shadows and no longer live as an assassin. Clenching his teeth, he promises to restore his mother's honor. Raon admits he doesn't fully understand the family's power dynamics, having been raised in a separate building. But he wants to learn and protect not only Sylvia, but also the happiness of those around him. Glenn asks if Raon plans to meet the family's high standards through the training, and Raon confirms it's his only option. Glenn promises to prepare the instructor accordingly, so Raon won't be disappointed. Raon collapses but declares that even though he used to be a top assassin, he will show everyone how strong he can become. The scene shifts to kids in training, and we meet another martial hallmaster named Glenn Zieghart. He questions whether Raon, rumored to be too weak to even move, could actually be suffering from an illness. Glenn recalls that every time he sees Raon, something seems off with his condition. He wonders, then, how Raon managed to withstand Glenn's overwhelming power. In a moment of contemplation, Glenn thinks about how Sylvia possesses an exceptional talent. He orders for a maid to be placed in the building and instructs her to report everything she discovers. At the fifth hall, Glenn strides through as everyone bows in respect. Everyone, that is, except for a red-haired elf named Lemure. Glenn tells Lemure to stop pretending to be asleep. Lemure comments that Glenn is the only one immune to his sleep-inducing tricks. Glenn chides him for his laziness, pointing out that everyone else is hard at work. Lemure, the head instructor, retorts that they're merely following Glenn's orders. He argues that he's doing the thinking while others do the physical labor. Glenn tells Lemur that even after 50 years, he hasn't matured a bit. Lemur retorts that people don't change easily. Lemur then asks Glenn if he's visiting because of his youngest grandson. He mentions that Sylvia had also visited with the same concerns. She asked Lemur to ensure the young man wasn't harmed. Glenn assures Lemur that he doesn't want the training to be diluted, he abhors weakness. Upon hearing this, Lemur briefly pauses and then pretends to be overly enthusiastic, suggesting that Glenn must really love his grandson. Glenn warns him that if they weren't friends, Lemur would be on the floor right now. He instructs Lemur to be strict and dismiss any unworthy trainees, ensuring only the deserving ones receive his teachings. Satisfied, Glenn leaves. Alone, Lemur ponders about what kind of person Raon is. Meanwhile, we see that Raon has achieved the 3rd level in the Ring of Fire, making him a 3-star, which also helps reduce his curse of bitter cold. Raon observes that he feels different, sharper, and more clear-headed than before. After training, his mother comforts him. Raon realizes that he's still at the beginning of a long and challenging journey. Becoming a 3-star is just the first step, and he knows he needs a solid foundation to excel and silence his critics. He dreams of mastering the legendary technique, the Heavenly Sword Strike. Late at night, his mother enters his room, surprised to find him awake. She asks why he's still up, and Raon asks why she's visiting so late. She tells him she wanted to talk to him before he leaves for training. Worried, she asks if he must go, confessing that she's concerned he'll get hurt and won't say anything about it. She fears he might suffer severe injuries, a thought that leaves both contemplating the risks ahead. He listens as she confesses her past, explaining how she fell in love with his father during a mission. The love was forbidden because his father was a regular knight, so she had to give up her magical abilities and leave her family to be with him. She also reveals a heart-wrenching secret. He had an older sister named Sia, but both she and his father were killed in an ambush. Feeling lost and powerless, she returned to her family, which led to the harsh treatment she endures now. As he hears her story, he realizes she acted selfishly, abandoning her duties for love and then coming back when things got tough. But despite her flaws, she's the first person to ever show him love, and she's the only mother he's ever known. When he asks if she regrets her choices, she says no. Leaving the family made her feel alive and gave her moments of true happiness. She apologizes for not being a good mother, to which he reassures her that he's fine and promises to help her regain her standing in the family. She starts crying uncontrollably. Later, he reflects on how emotionally draining it was to comfort his mother. Knowing he has limited time before his training, he turns his attention to the Ring of Fire, ROF. He observes that its speed has increased now that he's reached a 3-star level, wondering what challenges future levels will bring. Suddenly, a mysterious blue aura appears before him. A voice speaks, introducing itself as Wrath, the second lord of the demon realm. Confused, Raon realizes that a hidden aspect of himself is being activated, his innate rage. Wrath starts to offer him a deal that would require sacrificing his soul and body, but stops short, noticing that Raon is still just a child. Curious and a bit apprehensive, Raon asks Wrath to reveal his identity. Wrath confronts Raon, claiming that the rage he sensed inside him was too intense for a mere child. After a pause, he backtracks and says that it was indeed Raon's own suppressed rage. Wrath proposes a deal. Raon should surrender his body and soul for the chance to exact the revenge he craves. Raon ponders whether this rage is directed at Derek, then declines the offer. He wants to carry out his revenge on his own, without external help. Wrath corrects him. It's not a proposal but a foregone conclusion. The atmosphere grows icy as Wrath expands in size. Wrath charges at Raon, his presence turning the room into a frozen chamber. Raon feels like his thoughts are freezing over. Then Wrath morphs into the image of Derek, urging Raon to unleash his suppressed anger. Even a god would perish, he says. Raon struggles to resist, attributing his endurance to his affinity with water. But this isn't just cold, Wrath is also fueling his internal rage. Suddenly, Wrath whispers in Rowan's ear, disguised as Derek. Rowan thinks he can't risk giving his body to this mysterious entity. Wrath pressures him, saying there's no reason to resist. He'd prefer to minimize harm since he plans to use Rowan's body, but if he must, he'll consume him entirely. Rowan feels he's at his breaking point, fearing he'll die soon. Then it hits him. If his water attribute allows him to withstand the cold, perhaps his Ring of Fire technique could counteract the pain. It's his last shot at survival. As he begins to channel the energy, Wrath starts to panic. "How is this possible?" he exclaims. Determined, Raon announces that he'll exact his revenge on his terms, without letting a phantom control him. Enraged, Wrath admits he underestimated him. Rowan taunts Wrath, saying that if he's just awakened and can't use his full powers, then he stands no chance. Just then, a status window pops up in front of Raon, indicating that new abilities are unlocked. A surprised Wrath wonders why Raon has access to this system, as he was the one who created it. Raon asks what he means, prompting Wrath to question why the system appears for him. Raon surmises it's for tracking progress, surprising Wrath with his insight. Raon then punches through Wrath, mentioning that he infused the punch with mana just to check. Wrath confirms that he doesn't have a physical form, since no one else seems to notice the commotion. Wrath then turns into a flower bracelet around Rowan's wrist, declaring that his power is still recovering. Raon ponders aloud that he wants to get rid of Wrath, but that could mean losing the system, which could impact Sylvia. So he decides to keep Wrath close but under control, in order to speed up his own progress. He then wonders why Wrath chose to become a flower bracelet, to which Wrath replies, "Respect my preferences." The next day, Raon descends the stairs, ready to head off to the training hall. Helen and Sylvia wish him well, urging him to be careful. As he leaves, Helen asks Sylvia why she looks so sad. Sylvia expresses her faith in Raon, who assures her he'll back off if the training gets too tough. He waves goodbye, leaving Sylvia to worry about his health. Helen reassures her, saying Raon is strong and will be fine. At the training hall, Raon finds it packed with kids from different families, not just the Ziegharts. Helen mentions that this year's turnout is high, so they've even opened up a 6th training hall. While Raon gets sneers and insults from some of the other kids, even mocking his flower bracelet, Wrath fumes quietly, vowing to make them regret their words. Sylvia, back at home, prays for Rowan's safety, hoping he'll return unharmed. Raon, in the meantime, steps into the bustling training hall, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Raon speaks up, telling them that if they have something to say, they should say it to his face. They retort that someone from an indirect lineage shouldn't be so bold. Raon fires back, saying they're also from an indirect lineage, so what gives them the right to talk down to him? As one of them grabs Raon's collar and clenches a fist, ready to strike, another young man intervenes. It's Byrne, who we met earlier, and he warns them that their squabbling is disgracing the family name. Seeing Byrne, they back off immediately. Byrne then turns to Raon, advising him to know his place. He tells Raon that he's insignificant and should keep a low profile if he wants to stay in the family. Byrne adds that Raon's earlier success in catching Glenn's attention was pure luck and warns him that a loser like him will likely fail the upcoming training. Raon retorts, questioning Byrne's authority, considering the only thing he has going for him is his direct lineage. Just then, the door bursts open, and a man named Lemure walks in. Raon recognizes him and is surprised to see him here. Byrne grudgingly leaves the room. Lemure introduces himself to everyone and says that there are too many trainees. He intends to cut down the number to a more manageable size. The atmosphere grows tense, and the trainees grow fearful. Lemure states that his word is the law here and that any objections should be directed at Glenn. He then asks what they're waiting for, and suddenly, some of the trainees start to run. Wrath asks Raon why he's running at the back of the pack. Raon replies that it's not a race. There's no need to overtake others. According to him, Lemure is interested in their potential and endurance, not speed. The real winner will be the one who endures till the end. Onlookers observe the trainees, impressed by how quickly they are running, particularly Byrne and another young woman named Ronan. they note that at just 12 years old, their abilities are extraordinary. Then, they spot Raon, lagging but still enduring despite his earlier weakness. Lemur watches this and starts to smile, intrigued by Raon's unique approach and the qualities he hasn't seen in someone before. In the midst of the competition, Raon reflects on his unique ability to gauge the power of most people around him, except for himself. The others, unaware of his thoughts, mock him for trailing behind in what seems to be a simple running exercise. Raon chuckles internally. In his previous life, he'd had to outrun deadly beasts. This exercise is child's play in comparison. The race continues. Another competitor, Limo, marvels at Raon's relentless pace. He can't fathom how Raon keeps going. His determination seems beyond human limits. Burn, another runner, is puzzled when he finds Raon right on his heels. He recalls overhearing doctors discussing Raon's health and decides he's had enough. Utilizing his special skill, he surges ahead to take the lead. Raon watches but remains unfazed. Runan, another competitor, seems even less concerned. Raon reflects that the true battle isn't against each other. It's a test of their own mental fortitude. As the race wears on, many kids are running out of steam. They wonder how Raon keeps going. Is he not tired? Raon thinks to himself that he's exhausted and feels like he could collapse at any moment. But he's tapping into the Ring of Fire technique, squeezing every last drop from his diminishing stamina. Just then, Wrath, a malevolent entity who considers Raon his future host, intervenes. He wants Raon's body now. Wrath attacks Raon internally, causing searing pain. Raon grits his teeth, knowing he mustn't show weakness. That's what Wrath is waiting for. The entity taunts him, saying no one can resist his power. Raon knows he has to endure. If he shows any signs of weakness, Wrath will consume him. As he pushes through the pain, his vision starts to blur, and his breath grows shallow. Is this his limit? He wonders, fighting to maintain control over his own body. Just then, Lemur interrupts, saying, "Enough is enough." Raon catches his breath while Runan observes him keenly. Wrath wonders aloud how Raon could have endured so much pain. Raon replies that he had already warned them. The trials not only failed to break him, but also strengthened his Ring of Fire technique and his physical prowess. A message appears, indicating that Raon has gained experience. Wrath can't believe it and scoffs, calling it absurd. Lemur then addresses everyone. He admits that what he said before the test was merely a motivational ploy. If they performed like they did today, they would ultimately fail. Out of 160 participants, only one ran to the very end. Some may have cheated by using their aura, but Lemur doesn't care about the methods as long as they pass the test. They have 6 months to officially become trainees, and he will select the top performers without ranking them. Dismissed, everyone heads to their dorms and the training center. Later, Lemur goes into the woods and encounters Glenn. Glenn, irritated, tells him that he's intruding on his nap time. Lemur retorts that he saw the test and knows how sharp Glenn's instincts are. Runan and Burn are indeed talented, as are some other kids. But Raon is a puzzle. He seemed out of stamina. So how did he keep running? This interests Lemur, who confesses that life has been dull since his own core was damaged. Glenn reminds him of his duties as an instructor, to which Lemur replies that he might have found someone worthy to pass on his legacy. Glenn suggests that it's just a coincidence, but Lemur smiles knowingly, saying it feels like more than that. Raon decides it's time to head to the training center, but Wrath warns him not to push his luck. The other trainees eye Raon with contempt, whispering among themselves that he must have cheated to endure so long. Crane, one of the trainees, speculates that Raon might have consumed some sort of miracle elixir, possibly provided by the so-called Saint of Rags. Deciding it's time to teach him a lesson, they hurl Raon into a tree. Confused and hurt, Raon questions why they're doing this to him. A kid named Crane accuses Raon of using some sort of magical medicine to cheat. Crane's friend supports the accusation, claiming that Raon is fighting dirty. They insist they just want to talk, but Crane throws a punch at Raon. Another kid named Wrath watches and wonders if Raon will just let it happen. Instead, Raon surprises everyone by punching Crane squarely in the face. "If you want to talk, then let's talk," Raon declares. Another kid tries to land a punch but ends up getting blocked and kicked in the stomach by Raon. Crane's friend asks what's going on before receiving a punch to the face himself. Meanwhile, Crane, who is down, gets another kick from Raon. Wrath observes all this and comments on how entertaining it is to watch. After knocking the other kids down, Raon places his foot on Crane's hands and inquires if someone named the Masked Spurn is behind this setup. Crane denies it, saying they acted on their own. Raon seems somewhat surprised, admitting he thought Crane hated him but maybe not as much as he'd assumed. After confirming that Crane won't talk about their conversation, Raon warns him to steer clear if he wants to avoid another confrontation. Crane agrees, promising not to even step on Raon's shadow. Raon tells him to leave, and Crane does. In the background, a figure named Lima watches the whole scene, smiling and remarking how it reminds her of a younger person named Glenn. Wrath, who has been observing, finds that his agility has increased and is puzzled by it. Raon says he's responsible for that increase, leading to Wrath admitting that he didn't expect to lose that skill to Raon. Wrath then proposes a wager to Raon. If Raon wins, he'll give him a weapon called the Axe. But if he loses, Wrath will acquire something called Rage Receipts, allowing Raon to advance as a top trainee. There's also a trade option, in which Wrath would transfer one of his traits to Raon. When Raon asks about the downside, the rage penalty, Wrath explains that he'll take some of Raon's accumulated rage. Though it's not much, if Raon loses control, it could be bad. Weighing the risks and rewards, Raon agrees to the bet, seeing that the potential gains far outweigh the possible loss. Wrath commends him on making a wise choice. The story continues with Raon declaring that if he taps into his past life skills, he won't be defeated. The next morning, we find the young trainees exhausted from holding a difficult stance. Lemur, their instructor, tells them that the horse stance is fundamental to all martial arts. He isn't forcing them to endure it. They are the ones taking the test. The trainees grumble, questioning its relevance to swordsmanship. Burn, another instructor, tells them to quit complaining and sends them off to sword practice. Raon watches them go. Wrath asks Raon if he'll join the swordsmanship training. Raon declines, saying it's pointless to practice advanced skills without mastering the basics. He doesn't need a sword right now. He needs to build up his physical strength. Due to the dark spell known as the Bitter Cult Curse, his body is weaker than others. He'll focus on basic strength training, establishing a solid foundation before advancing. As he exercises, Runan observes him from a distance. She's intrigued by how the weights he's lifting seem to increase every day. While it's normal for people to improve over time, such rapid progress is unusual. She wonders if Raon has some unique talent in training, and finds his consistency intriguing. Curiosity getting the better of her, she approaches him. Standing before Raon, she simply stares at him when he asks her what brings her there, saying nothing but conveying that there's something about him that she finds puzzling yet compelling. Runan approached Raon, surprising him. He asked her why she was there, but she remained silent, pondering what was causing Raon's rapid growth. Suddenly, she snapped back to reality, realizing she was staring at him. Despite his frail appearance, Raon displayed remarkable endurance. She casually moved to his side and effortlessly lifted a heavy barbell, leaving Raon bewildered. Though it felt similar, nothing extraordinary stood out. However, an inexplicable fragrance from Raon suddenly made her weights feel feather-light, boosting her strength and agility. This sensation vanished when Raon moved on, leaving Runan perplexed. She trailed him, trying heavier weights, and discovered that his presence genuinely enhanced her abilities. Silently, Raon continued his routine as Runan followed, captivated by both the prospect of training with heavier weights and the mysterious fragrance surrounding him. A moment later, the training room door swung open, and Buran entered with a group of fellow trainees. They noticed Runan following Raon and expressed their displeasure. The trainees were visibly angered, questioning why Runan was associating with someone like Raon, emphasizing that nothing good came from being around that bastard, who had lost the title of the direct lineage. Buren grabbed a wooden training sword, addressing the others, asserting that Raon was wasting his time with repetitive training that had no real purpose. He claimed that Raon was weak and needed basic training to catch up, but even with that, they were still on a different level from him. Buren urged the trainees not to concern themselves with Raon, referring to him as an indirect lineage bastard. He emphasized the importance of preparing for an upcoming test, though he admitted not knowing its specifics. Buren believed that training in swordsmanship, at the very least, would enhance their individual martial skills. Therefore, he urged the group to focus on their own training, as the results of the test would reveal everything they needed to know. A minute later, as Raon continued his exercises, a boy named Dorian approached him. Dorian introduced himself and politely asked if he could train next to Raon to learn the correct posture. Raon replied indifferently, stating that he didn't really care. Dorian reached into his bag, expressing his gratitude and insisting that it wasn't much but that Raon should try a cookie he had. He was about to decline when he noticed Runan standing beside him, her eyes fixed on the cookies with excitement. In the end, Raon decided to accept the cookie, and Runan happily indulged in one as well, surprising him with her enthusiasm. Soon, they found themselves helping Dorian with his training. Over the course of several days, weeks, and months, their bond grew stronger as they dedicated themselves to their training. Meanwhile, Buren remained focused on his own training, surrounded by his puppet trainees. 6 months of rigorous training had pushed Raon to his limits. Every day, he ran alongside the other trainees, pushing himself to the brink of exhaustion. The faces of the guys who initially stood in front of him on the first day were nowhere to be seen now. As he gasped for breath, he glanced up and realized that only 2 people remained ahead of him after all this time. The morning of the test arrived, and in the arena, the host welcomed the participants, with the guardians watching closely. Wrath teased him about remembering the bet they made, implying that he wouldn't surpass those 2. Raon simply pushed Wrath aside, explaining that the test was different, and its outcome was uncertain. He then turned to Dorian, who seemed nervous on the ground. Dorian confessed that he couldn't sleep at all the previous night due to test anxiety. He questioned whether someone as weak as him could succeed in the test. Raon remained silent, contemplating Dorian's question. Runan interrupted his thoughts by offering him a cookie, but he declined. Glancing over, he noticed Buren glaring at him. Raon wonders why he was surrounded by such peculiar individuals. On the other side of the arena, Sylvia excitedly urged Helen to look at Raon, who stood tall and confident. Helen acknowledged Raon's presence and mentioned that he had endured 6 grueling months of training. She noted that Raon had made friends, which didn't surprise her, as he had always had a warm and thoughtful personality. Helen was proud of the person Raon had become. Sylvia smiled, recalling her son's growth, and beamed with pride as she watched him. Suddenly, someone shouted that the patriarch was making his entrance. Glenn strode into the arena with an air of pride, causing a stir among the spectators who wondered why he was there, as he rarely attended such events. Rimmer, too, was surprised to see him. Cheerfully, Rimmer asked Glenn why he was present. Glenn replied that it was an event determining the family's future, prompting some to react as if he shouldn't be there. Awkwardly, Rimmer reassured him that his presence was welcome. He then announced that, with the patriarch present, there was no time to waste, and they would proceed with the test immediately. Rimmer unleashed his power, causing shock and awe among the trainees as Raon, too, was taken aback. Rimmer explained that the test would involve making it through his aura's pressure, presenting an unexpected challenge for the participants. Rimmer emphasizes that pressure is an integral aspect of a warrior's life and that the test will evaluate their ability to handle it. Despite this, one of the parents strongly objects to the test, arguing that it's too soon since the children learned aura. They believe the test is unfair, especially for those who haven't mastered aura yet. Furthermore, they express discontent over the perception that the students often slept during class. In the midst of this debate, Raon reflects on the concept of pressure. He understands that true pressure goes beyond the mere manifestation of aura. It represents the soul level of a warrior, a testament to their achievements, and something that can be conveyed even without using aura. Glenn steps in, endorsing Rimmer's perspective. This declaration surprises the parent, who hesitantly inquires about Glenn's stance. Glenn elaborates, emphasizing that pressure can indeed be acquired through one's life experiences. He highlights that even individuals lacking aura can possess significant pressure based on the hardships they've endured during their training. Rimmer acknowledges Glenn's agreement, silently appreciating his lord's support. Rimmer then brings the discussion to a close, assuring everyone that there should be no further objections to the test. He proceeds to ignore any disruptions and calls for the test to begin. His attention shifts to Runan, beckoning her to step forward, while instructing everyone else to step back. Runan takes a confident step forward, prepared to face the upcoming test. Rimmer emphasizes that the pressure he's about to exert is at a level she should be able to overcome if she had truly given her all during her training. He clarifies the test's objective. To pass, Runan must navigate through his pressure and touch him. With a firm declaration, Rimmer initiates the test, and Runan can immediately feel the weight of the pressure he's exerting. Rimmer adds that using aura will result in an immediate failure, emphasizing that Runan must rely on the willpower she's developed during her training. Resolute and determined, Runan gathers her inner strength and takes resolute steps forward. She demonstrates remarkable endurance, managing to reach out and grab Rimmer's arm. Rimmer acknowledges her success by gently tapping her head and announcing that Runan has passed. He commends her, stating that he can see the results of her hard work and encourages her to continue with the same mindset. Rimmer announces that the next participant is Dorian. Dorian is initially shocked and stammers, asking Rimmer why he's being called next. Rimmer responds curtly, stating that the order is at his discretion and instructs Dorian to hurry up. He directs Dorian to observe what Runan did before him, emphasizing that he should use the willpower he's developed during his training to break through the wall of pressure Rimmer will create. Dorian expresses doubt, questioning whether it's even possible due to his well-known lack of willpower. Rimmer bluntly responds that if Dorian doesn't try, he'll simply fail. Rimmer then exerts his pressure, and Dorian immediately feels its intensity, struggling to endure it as he kneels down. Raon reflects on the situation, noting that Rimmer adjusted the pressure level individually for each participant based on their abilities and training. He realizes that Rimmer had been closely observing all the children. Meanwhile, Dorian makes slow progress, somehow managing to grab Rimmer's leg. Rimmer acknowledges his success, exclaiming that all Dorian had to do was get it done, and declares that Dorian has passed. However, Rimmer doesn't hold back on feedback, advising Dorian that he lacks confidence and should hold his head higher from now on. He concludes by stating that Dorian has heard enough, but Dorian's reaction is unexpected, as he suddenly vomits on the spot. Rimmer calls for the next participant, announcing that it's Glenn Zieghart's turn. Glenn steps forward, and Rimmer wastes no time, immediately initiating the test. This time, Rimmer's pressure is significantly more intense than before. Glenn realizes that he must reach Rimmer while enduring this overwhelming pressure, a challenge that's entirely different from merely observing it from the sidelines. Struggling to withstand the pressure, Glenn finds himself kneeling and unable to move forward. He reflects on how Runan managed to overcome this ordeal and feels helpless in comparison. Rimmer acknowledges Glenn's talent, stating that he is more skilled than most of the other 160 students. However, he criticizes Glenn and the others for wasting their time on empty and hollow swordsmanship that misses the real purpose. Rimmer believes they should have focused on training their bodies and willpower instead of relying on aura whenever things got tough. He warns that if they use aura now, they will fail immediately. Glenn is determined not to fail and recalls a significant memory from his past, involving his father's stern refusal to allow his older brother inside. He gathers all his strength and finally manages to touch Rimmer's legs. Rimmer confirms Glenn's success, stating that he has passed. However, he offers some advice, reminding Glenn that he is still only 12 years old and should stop pretending to be an adult. He advises Glenn to train in a way that suits his age and warns him about potential obstacles if he only focuses on what's in front of him. Rimmer calls Glenn Zieghart to the front, and Raon responds enthusiastically. Rimmer confirms that Raon is the last participant and asks if he's ready. Raon confidently affirms his readiness. Without delay, Rimmer exerts an unparalleled level of pressure on Raon, shocking the entire audience. Even Glenn is taken aback by the intensity of the pressure, while Raon himself questions the nature of this test. Rimmer acknowledges Raon's exceptional talent, even surpassing Runan and Buren, and instructs Raon to endure the overwhelming pressure. Raon delves into his inner self, realizing that the soul level extends beyond his current body, drawing strength from his past life as Raon the assassin. Rimmer is amazed by Raon's ability to overcome this incredible pressure. Raon continues forward with ease, touching Rimmer's chest. This leaves Rimmer bewildered, questioning the impossibility of the situation. Raon calmly inquires if the test is now complete. The entire audience is left in a state of shock and excitement. Whispers and mutters fill the air as people express their astonishment. They can't believe that someone, particularly an invalid without aura, managed to break through that overwhelming pressure. They question the logic and marvel at the achievement. Rimmer, equally surprised and intrigued, addresses Raon with a query. He asks Raon what he is, clearly astonished by what he's just witnessed. Raon responds calmly, reminding Rimmer that he oversaw his training for 6 months, and that he is Raon. Rimmer follows up, expressing his curiosity because Raon's abilities have clearly exceeded the value of those 6 months of training. He admits that he intentionally applied pressure that surpassed Raon's capabilities and that he was merely playing around. Rimmer confesses that he never expected Raon to break through it. Rimmer, with a light-hearted tone, acknowledges a momentary distraction and proceeds to announce the end of the official trainee selection. He then unveils the highly anticipated top trainee, which turns out to be Glenn Zieghart. The joy and pride are palpable among the spectators. Sylvia expresses her elation, while Helen confirms Raon's achievement. The audience members react with a mix of amazement and speculation, discussing how Raon could have claimed the top position, especially surpassing Sir Buren's performance. Buren interrupts Rimmer, vehemently questioning the announcement. He expresses his disbelief and accuses Rimmer of lying about Raon being the top trainee. Rimmer, taken aback, asks Buren, "What am I lying about?" Buren continues to argue, asserting that Raon is inferior to him in stamina, strength, and talent. He refuses to accept that someone like Raon could hold the top trainee position, accusing him of using some kind of trick. The audience reacts to Buren's accusations, with some considering the possibility of Raon employing underhanded tactics. They raise questions about Raon's lack of aura, the curse of frost, and whether he may have bribed the trainer. Buren further suggests that, as warriors of House Zieghart, they should settle matters through direct combat instead of relying on a test like this. Rimmer poses a direct question to Buren, asking if he desires the position of being the top trainee that much. Buren fumbles in his response. Rimmer informs Buren that unfortunately, the test has already concluded, implying there's no room for further debate. He turns to Glenn, the head of the house, seeking his opinion on how to handle the situation. Glenn, in turn, addresses Raon. Acknowledging the discontent among the others and inquiring if Raon desires to engage in a duel against Buren. Raon firmly declines, stating that the test has ended, and the results have been determined. He sees no reason to duel Buren when there's nothing to gain from it. Raon then directs a comment toward Buren, expressing surprise at how gracelessly Buren has accepted the outcome. Buren responds with frustration, but before the situation escalates further, Glenn intervenes. He suggests settling the matter with a duel, with the position of top trainee on the line. If Raon wins, Glenn promises to grant him a bronze tablet. Raon considers the offer, recognizing the significance of a bronze tablet, even if it's not the highest rank. He contemplates the potential rewards tied to the tablets, and speculates that Glenn might not be pleased with him holding the top trainee position. Raon accepts Glenn's proposal with a simple, "understood," and Glenn promptly decides to begin the duel right away. Raon firmly insists that they should determine the top trainee definitively. The rules for the duel are then announced. It will be a one-round duel, and participants are prohibited from using aura or weapons. Only their physical bodies are allowed. Raon and Buren stand face to face in the middle of the arena, ready for the duel to commence. Rimmer gives the signal to start the duel. Buren launches a fierce attack on Raon, putting all his strength behind each blow. Raon manages to defend against Buren's relentless assault. Then, Buren employs a technique called the Void Tiger Fist, revealing that it was a technique personally passed down by his father. Buren argues that since fist techniques weren't mentioned in the rules, it's not cheating. Some students in the audience applaud Buren's tactics, expressing their approval of his performance and suggesting that Raon is powerless against him. While Buren continues to barrage Raon with his fist attacks, he taunts Raon, questioning his audacity to challenge the top trainee position as someone from the collateral line. Buren recalls his father's words when he expelled his older brother, emphasizing that weaklings have no place among the Ziegharts, and urging Buren not to disappoint him. In this critical moment, Buren is determined to prove himself and not be defeated by someone like Raon, especially with his father watching. Raon remains calm and focused, dodging Buren's attacks while carefully analyzing his movements. He observes that everything, from Buren's fists to his flow and attacks, is clear to him. Buren questions Raon if he's giving up, declaring his intention to end the duel with a powerful punch. However, Raon responds confidently, asking why he would give up. In a surprising turn of events, Raon decides to counterattack. He strikes Buren with a mighty fist to the chest, leaving Buren bewildered and causing him to fall to his knees. The audience reacts with amazement, murmuring that what they witnessed is impossible. Glenn, too, is taken aback, contemplating how Raon managed to execute the Void Tiger Fist. Buren, struggling to understand what just happened, asks Raon how he knows the Void Tiger Fist. Raon calmly explains that Buren had shown it to him during their duel, and he merely followed Buren's fist technique. The audience is left in complete shock, and whispers ripple through the crowd. The unexpected use of the Void Tiger Fist by Raon has left everyone in disbelief, and they are left searching for an explanation for this astonishing turn of events. Rimmer is deeply impressed as he watches Raon's exceptional performance. He contemplates that Raon is the real deal. Raon not only read and countered the Void Tiger Fist but also nullified its rotation with an opposing counterpunch. This level of understanding and mastery of martial arts flow is nothing short of genius. Raon has demonstrated the kind of talent that can elevate him to the pinnacle of the continent. It's the heavenly talent that Zieghart has been searching for. Rimmer then officially announces the outcome of the match, acknowledging that the result is clear to everyone. He declares Glenn Zieghart as the victor of the duel, solidifying his position as the top trainee. Rimmer warmly pats Raon on the shoulder and officially declares the end of the exam. The tension in the arena dissipates as the outcome is settled. Sylvia rushes into the arena and embraces Raon with immense joy. Runan's parents share their happiness and offer their congratulations. However, Buren's father watches from a distance, his distress apparent in his eyes. Buren is left with a sense of dread, uncertain about how he will face his father as he watches him walk away. The scene shifts to Buren standing before his father in the mansion. His father addresses him with a stern tone, calling his name, Buren, and reminds him of their previous conversation. Buren is clearly frightened but responds, recalling what his father had told him. He acknowledges that his father instructed him to return as the top trainee and never lose to anyone. His father, still displeased, emphasizes the expectations, mentioning defeating the Sullian House's representative and rising to the top of the class. However, he expresses his frustration that Buren lost to someone who was discarded from the main line. He questions whether Buren intends to bring embarrassment to the family or follow the path of his less successful siblings. In fear, Buren vehemently denies any such intentions, assuring his father that he does not want to become like his third or fourth siblings. Buren's father doesn't mince words, informing Buren that he has already messed up his first chance. He emphasizes that the position of the top trainee will be decided during the trainee graduation based on grades, and he expects Buren to reclaim that position. With a stern tone, he instructs Buren to leave, reminding him that if he wishes to remain under the direct Zieghart line, he cannot afford to fail this final opportunity. Disappointed and in tears, Buren departs from the mansion, his emotions a mix of fury and frustration. He curses the situation, blaming Raon for his predicament and questioning how he could have possibly lost when he believed he had worked hard enough to ensure victory. Lost in thought, Buren finds himself at the gymnasium, wondering why he came there. He questions if it's just a habit or if it's because the exam has just ended, leaving the place empty. As he looks at Raon's locker, curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to take a peek. Inside, he's astonished to find a collection of more than 10 pairs of shoes, worn through in just 6 months. This sight makes him reflect on Raon's dedication to training, in stark contrast to his own approach of neglecting the basics and seeking to impress with flashy moves or comfortable rests in the dorms. Buren realizes that Raon embodied the true essence of the Ziegharts while he pursued the opposite path. Leaving the gymnasium with newfound determination, he resolves to face the challenges ahead with a different mindset. Wrath expresses amazement at Raon's unique abilities and questions what he truly is. Raon, in his usual mysterious way, tells Wrath that he's free to imagine. However, he's more interested in understanding the ability that just manifested. The screen before him shows that he has won in his bet against Wrath, and all ability points have been increased by 2, plus 1 random special trait among the ones possessed by Wrath. Perception of the Snowflower has been created for him. Wrath, the King of Essence, doesn't hold back in praising Raon's newly acquired trait. Perception of the Snowflower. He acknowledges its value, deeming it an impressive ability that enhances sensory range. As a 1-star trait, it promises a 10% expansion of Raon's sensory capabilities, a significant boon. In response to Raon's curiosity about the name, Wrath admits that it's a matter of personal preference and coolness. He defends the choice by asking, "Isn't it a cool name?" Raon, however, doesn't seem convinced and humorously criticizes Wrath's naming skills. Wrath, ever the proud king of essence, doesn't take kindly to the critique and retorts, "I won't hear it from you." The scene shifts to Raon and Sylvia engaging in light conversation. Their butler interrupts them with news of the head of the house's summons for Raon. Sylvia expresses concern, wondering if Raon had done something wrong. The butler reassures her that there's no need to worry. The head of the house wishes to personally award Raon with the bronze tablet. Raon promptly appears before Glenn, the head of the house, and greets him respectfully. Glenn reluctantly fulfills his promise, granting Raon the bronze tablet. He explains its significance, emphasizing that in the future, Raon can exchange the tablet for an appropriate item or favor. Raon returns the bronze tablet and immediately inquires about his mother, Sylvia Zieghart, and what he must do to restore her position within the direct line of the Zieghart family. Glenn confirms Raon's intention and explains that achieving this goal requires a remarkable accomplishment recognized by the entire Zieghart house. He cautions that it won't be easy, comparing it to plucking a star from the sky, especially for someone like Raon. Raon, undeterred, thanks the head of the house for the answer and begins to walk away. However, Glenn stops him and offers him a reward for his question. Raon is surprised by this unexpected gesture and waits for further instructions. Glenn prompts Raon to state his wish, and Raon reveals that he needs a cultivation technique, specifically an aura cultivation technique superior to the ones taught during basic training. Glenn assures him that such a technique will be provided by the trainers as part of his basic training. However, Raon insists that he needs an even better aura cultivation technique. Raon earnestly requests Glenn to provide him with a cultivation technique that befits the status of a bronze-rank tablet. He realizes that the shadow cultivation technique from his previous life won't suffice for his current goals. To reclaim Sylvia's position and confront Darius, he needs a much stronger and superior aura. In response to Raon's request, Glenn snaps his fingers, opening a gate to one of the Zieghart bookcases, which astounds Raon with its vast collection of books. Glenn explains that if Raon raises his hand in the center, the book he requires the most will appear. Raon raises his hand, hoping for a technique superior to the shadow cultivation technique. He contemplates the importance of finding something truly useful. To his surprise, an old and worn-out book, glowing with an ethereal light, flies toward him. The book's title reads, 10,000 Flames Cultivation. Raon is left pondering the nature of this cultivation technique, intrigued by its appearance and the radiant light it emits. In a poignant flashback, Glenn reminisces about the circumstances that led to Sylvia's abandonment. The memories flood his mind, and he reflects on the days when he prioritized the house above all else. leaving emotions as a mere luxury. During that time, he achieved military might that surpassed the demonic wall and expanded the house's influence significantly. However, he ponders the sacrifices he made and what he lost in the process. One vivid memory stands out: the news that his son-in-law and granddaughter were attacked by the twin ghosts of Eden, whom Lady Sylvia had looked into before. Sylvia herself seemed relatively unharmed, but the other two met a tragic end. In his contemplation, Glenn recognizes the frailty of his emotions and acknowledges that no matter how much he wishes to, he cannot change the past. Despite the potential for Raon and Sylvia to harbor resentment towards him, he resolves to protect them this time. Meanwhile, the book continues to radiate a brilliant light, enveloping Raon's body and mind in a mysterious sensation. He can feel something surging within him, something powerful and transformative. It's as though the very essence of the technique is flowing into him. Concerned and intrigued, Glenn calls out to Raon, seeking an explanation for this unusual phenomenon. Raon, still in awe of what just transpired, can only respond with uncertainty. He mentions how he obtained the cultivation technique when it mysteriously appeared in his hand. Glenn is curious about the name of the book, and Raon informs him that it was called 10,000 Flames Cultivation. Just as he says this, a screen materializes, declaring that the 10,000 Flames Cultivation has been remembered, adding to the enigma surrounding this newfound power. As Raon leaves the royal hall with the newly acquired knowledge of the 10,000 Flames Cultivation, Glenn and the butler have a hushed conversation. The butler is concerned about the implications of Raon learning this secret technique, but Glenn reassures him that it's unlikely anyone will find out about it. Glenn explains that the 10,000 Flames Cultivation is a technique passed down from the first head of House Zieghart, and no one in Zieghart's history has ever managed to read or master it. He believes that even if Raon and Sylvia were exposed to danger, nobody knows about this unique cultivation technique. When the butler raises concerns about the disappearance of the cultivation book, Glenn dismisses it, stating that it's not a problem. He believes that the technique would have remained unused if not for Raon, and the book was simply decaying on the shelf. Glenn contemplates the future, sensing that new winds of change are on the horizon. Raon shares his thoughts with Wrath, expressing his bewilderment at the unexpected gift of the 10,000 Flames Cultivation technique. He questions why such a valuable technique was bestowed upon him, even surpassing the worth of a silver or golden tablet. Despite recognizing its immense value, Raon shares his struggles in trying to learn the technique, highlighting the difficulty in gathering enough aura. He understands that mastering such an advanced cultivation technique will take time and effort. Wrath offers his words of encouragement to Raon as he struggles with the 10,000 Flames Cultivation. He advises Raon to be cautious during his cultivation, emphasizing the potential danger if someone were to interrupt him. Raon shares additional concerns, explaining that this technique involves absorbing nature's mana to accumulate aura in the energy center. He warns that disturbing him during this process could damage his mana circuits and energy center, a risk made even more significant due to the coldness within his mana circuits. Raon reminds Wrath not to interfere with his cultivation, considering the potential risks involved. Wrath, curious about the outcome, ponders what might happen next. Raon, sensing Wrath's mischievous tone, becomes wary and says, "Wait, don't tell me." Wrath, with a sly smile, suggests that just once, he should be allowed to interrupt Raon during his cultivation, clearly intending to playfully test Raon's concentration. Raon expresses concern about Wrath's suggestion of interrupting his cultivation just once, given the potential risks of becoming crippled. Wrath, however, dismisses these concerns, emphasizing that the King of Essence can restore any damage Raon might incur during the interruption. Raon agrees to the challenge, asking Wrath if he plans to attack during his cultivation. Wrath warns Raon to be on constant guard, as the King of Essence can invade his mind at any time, instilling an atmosphere of perpetual vigilance. Raon acknowledges the constant threat posed by Wrath, viewing him as an enemy who seeks to consume his body. Despite a period of silence from Wrath, Raon remains vigilant, recognizing that he must always be on guard against this relentless adversary. For now, he pushes these thoughts aside and focuses on more pressing matters. Raon observes the annex building's maid, Duel, who is sitting in the lawn. Wrath comments on this and suggests that Raon is finally attending to her. Raon confirms this and acknowledges that her frequent visits are not a coincidence. He intends to handle the situation and return to his original task. Duel contemplates her situation. She notes that she didn't have much to report before, except for Raon talking to himself from time to time. However, now she has something significant to report. She didn't expect Raon to receive such an advanced cultivation technique with just a bronze tablet. Additionally, she sensed that the flow of mana during his aura cultivation was extraordinary. Duel recognizes that this information is important for the Central Martial Palace. She reflects on her role, which is to gather information behind Raon's back, and wonders how long she will need to continue with this task, especially considering that he's just a kid. As she is about to send all this information written on a paper to someone via lake. Raon suddenly appears from behind and puts a knife on her neck. She realizes that he has discovered her presence and is aware of her spying. Raon questions her about the information she gathered, leaving Duel puzzled about how he could have known all along. She contemplates whether he was pretending not to notice her presence. Raon then instructs her to open her mouth and proceeds to feed her something. Afterward, he retrieves a paper from the lake. Duel is left with questions about his intentions and how he managed to stay one step ahead of her. Raon, unable to see the contents of the letter, questions Duel about whether it's an encoded paper that requires a specific reaction to be read. As Raon mentions various keywords, such as water, earth, fire, wind, moonlight, and sunlight, he deduces that so it's moonlight, leaving Duel startled. Then, Raon mentions several names, including Glenn Zieghart, Glenn Zieghart, and Denier, and deduces that Glenn Zieghart was the one behind the order. Duel is shocked that Raon could extract so much information from her expressions alone. She realizes that her training as a spy has not prepared her for someone who can read her thoughts effortlessly. She begins to connect the dots. The burning pain in her body and Raon's ability to read her thoughts without any difficulty can only be explained by one thing. The substance Raon fed her earlier was a rage worm. In a flashback, Glenn Zieghart instructs Duel to infiltrate the annex building and gather all the information she can about Raon and Sylvia. He promises her a reward if she successfully completes this task. In the present, Duel asks Raon if he fed her a rage worm, and Raon acknowledges her knowledge of what a rage worm is, expressing surprise. Duel is in pain, and it's revealed that a rage worm allows the caster to not only discern the target's location but also read their thoughts, making it a powerful and painful curse. Raon deduces that Duel sent the letter to Glenn Zieghart and must be a spy from the Central Martial Palace. He suspects that her operation began 7 months ago after the judgment ceremony and that she conducted thorough investigations not only on him but also on his mother, Helen, and the other maids. Duel reflects on her mission and how she initially thought it would be easy to gather information on Raon and Sylvia, considering them to be a child and a person with a disability. However, she now realizes that a formidable adversary resides in the annex. Raon proposes a new role for Duel as a double agent. He instructs her to report information that would have been discovered naturally to Glenn but to conceal crucial information that wouldn't have been otherwise uncovered. Conversely, he expects her to provide him with significant intelligence on Glenn. Duel agrees to this arrangement, and Raon emphasizes that he'll be expecting valuable information from her when she returns for her next assignment. With this understanding, Raon takes his leave. While Wrath questions Raon about when he summoned a rage worm, Raon clarifies that he didn't use something as unpleasant as a rage worm. Instead, he induced intense but temporary pain in Duel. Wrath is surprised by this revelation and asks if Raon managed to read her thoughts without using a rage worm. Raon explains that he obtained information through specific factors that others wouldn't be aware of. It's a unique ability that he possesses, allowing him to discern hidden details and thoughts. As the day to return to the training ground arrives, Raon continues to immerse himself in training. Despite his constant efforts, he remains unable to form aura even up until the day of beckoning. In the training ground, all the students gather, and it's revealed that only about 42 people have passed. Raon reflects on how strict Rimmer is when it comes to the end results. Meanwhile, he hears Runan calling his name, and they stand there, watching each other, both lost in thought. A few days ago, at the Sullian family's house, Runan's parents learned that young Master Raon had helped their daughter train. They asked Runan if she had greeted him and conveyed her thanks. Runan admitted that she had thanked him when she received her snacks, but didn't do so when he helped her train. Her parents emphasized the importance of showing gratitude regardless of gender and reminded her of basic courtesy. Back in the present, Runan says, "Thanks to Raon," which surprises him. He questions why she did that all of a sudden, and Wrath, unable to provide an answer, responds that he has no idea. Dorian rushes to Raon, calling him young Master Raon, and asks if he has been well. He expresses how challenging it has been since he became a proper trainee, with nightmares and sleepless nights. He mentions his relief that Raon is the head trainer because he believes he would be in trouble if it were young Master Burn instead. Raon listens to Dorian's rambling, finding it a bit too much to handle. Burn approaches Raon and apologizes for showing a poor side of himself a week ago. He expresses determination not to give up and promises to stand before Raon again. Raon acknowledges his resolve as Burn walks away, impressed by the 13-year-old's admission of his shortcomings. Wrath, on the other hand, suggests extreme measures. But Raon appreciates Burren's determination. Rimmer arrives and apologizes for being late, explaining that he had some wine and took a nap. He congratulates all the trainees on becoming official trainees and announces that formal training will begin immediately. He mentions that the overall routine will remain the same with some additional training programs, starting with the aura cultivation method. Suddenly, an angry girl appears at the gate and loudly complains about the door not opening. Rimmer acknowledges her arrival and informs the trainees that she is a failed trainee from the last batch. He instructs everyone to give their greetings as they will be training together. The girl introduces herself as Martha Zieghart. Rimmer mentions that despite her initial appearance, she's a good kid. Martha then asks about the head trainee and demands a round to check who the head trainee is. She's eager to challenge someone for the position right away. Raon is not pleased with the idea of someone worse than him potentially becoming the head trainee. Martha suggests that they fight right away to determine the top trainee. Raon, while not thrilled about the situation, steps forward and introduces himself as Glenn Zieghart, the top trainee. Martha seems surprised by his appearance and comments that he doesn't look like the top trainee. She's eager to engage in a fight without much talking. Burns steps in and questions Martha Zieghart's behavior, asking her why she's being so undignified. Martha responds with anger and threatens Burn. However, Burn defends Raon, mentioning that he was acknowledged as the top trainee by the instructor and the Lord. Martha remembers Burn's past behavior and is doing this to challenge Raon. Raon appreciates Burn's change in attitude and demeanor. Runan steps forward to protect Raon and asks Martha to leave. Martha responds with sarcasm and criticism, enjoying the tension among them. She expresses her disdain for those who hide behind others and calls them worse than the arrogant ones. Martha launches a powerful attack at Raon, but he skillfully dodges it, leaving her startled and frustrated. She warns Raon that he won't walk away unscathed after she's finished with him. Martha's aggressive attitude is halted by Rimmer's intervention. He reprimands everyone for underestimating him and emphasizes that Raon hasn't learned aura yet, so fighting him at this point wouldn't be fair. Martha concedes and decides to stop the fight. Raon returns to his position as instructed. Raon and Wrath have a conversation about Martha's attack. Wrath is furious and demands that Raon should have punished Martha severely for attacking them. Raon, on the other hand, believes it's better to bide his time and use the top trainee position as leverage when he has something to gain from Martha. He reassures Wrath that he has a plan for their next encounter. Burn reflects on the challenges of mastering advanced martial arts techniques. He acknowledges that while he found it easier to learn the 2-star's advanced rising fist, reaching the 3-star level is difficult due to the complex sequences required. He observes Raon's progress and is impressed by how quickly Raon is learning, considering it took Burren a month to master the 7-shaped fist. Burren also senses that Martha is feeling the pressure of Raon's rapid growth and asks her about it. It seems that Raon's progress is making an impact on those around him. Martha is frustrated and puzzled by Glenn Zieghart's rapid progress in learning martial arts techniques. She can't understand how he is improving so quickly, especially considering that he hadn't learned these techniques before, unlike Burin or Runan. Additionally, his body is not ordinary due to the coldness within it, making his tenacious training even more impressive. Martha is determined not to fall behind. She reflects on her past, where she was always considered a genius and excelled in everything. She would surpass members from both the direct and collateral lines of House Zieghart, mocking them when they struggled. However, now she's overwhelmed by anxiety and finds it challenging to cope with the pressure of Raon's rapid growth. After training, Martha's butler reassures her and compliments her on her training performance, but she reacts with frustration and disbelief. Martha demands to know what her butler is talking about, and he explains that despite Raon's recent impressive progress, she should never fear defeat at his hands. The butler responds that Raon has a critical weakness that he will never be able to overcome. This cryptic statement leaves Martha intrigued and curious about what that weakness might be, sparking her determination to continue her training and surpass Raon. That's a wrap for today's recap of The Reincarnated Assassin is a Genius Swordsman. We hope you enjoyed this thrilling adventure as much as we did. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated with all the latest manhwa recaps. Until next time, happy reading.